Hey, it's Christian Yordanov here. Thanks for tuning back into the show. Hope your summer's going great. I just wanted to drop a podcast today because just to make sure we're still here. We're still open for business type thing. We didn't disappear off the face of the earth. And today I wanted to talk about why I created the Live Longer formula. By the title of the show, as you know, we're dealing, and already know this. I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but it's also worth explaining some of the rationale behind the Live Longer formula because I think a lot of people they come to us with a problem usually. Some folks come just to optimize health, but more often than not, people are coming with one or usually more health challenges, whether that's a gut problem, sleep problem, skin problem. Fatigue is another common one, or usually it's a combination of those with some hormonal imbalances thrown in for good measure. But so people come to us with specific health challenges that, of course, our goal is to help you resolve as many of them as quickly as possible. But I think what I also, the old sort of adage, give people what they want, of course, but also give them what they need. So my goal with this program is not just to help you resolve the health challenge and hope for the best. My goal is to teach you how to resolve it and then maintain your health and optimal health and longevity for life. That's kind of the goal. And to do that, we really, what we have to do is we have to teach people. First of all, we have to raise a bit of awareness about what are the specifically modern health challenges that many of us may be aware of, but maybe not fully aware of, or even if we're aware of them, we're not sure how exactly to deal with them, right? So a lot of people just, I'll start with the first one. The first sort of couple really is that the modern human diet is actually pretty deficient. I think most of the listeners of the show, yourself included, know the soils are depleted. Like the people listening to this podcast, the people that come to us for help, they're not beginners for the most part. Most of our clients are already eating grass-fed organic, but they also know that the soils are pretty depleted due to bad farming practices, monocropping, depleting them, not rotating crops, all this stuff, right? This industrial scale agriculture is just really bad. And further to the diets being deficient and a lot of people eating just really glorified, what I call glorified toxic slop. Uh, so beyond that, a lot of the food is super contaminated with, as you know, pesticides, glyphosate, herbicides. Then, of course, the processed foods, we have tons of like chemicals, emulsifiers, what have you. But then, on top of the food being contaminated, just our modern environment is extremely, how shall I say, we are, I don't want to like sound too doom and gloomy because we are very much solution focused, right? But again, if you don't understand the sort of the gravity of the situation, I think a lot of people will not actually take serious action to start protecting themselves. A lot of people, they just wait until like something is wrong, like some fairly serious health problem has developed, and only then the pain is kind of the biggest driver. So if we can and again, I'm not like doing it to scare anyone because I think people know this already, either intuitively or they've already done the research. But if we can just light a fire under a person's ass a little bit, oh shit, this is like, whoa, it's pretty bad. I got to do stuff. I got to do stuff. Otherwise, I'm gonna end up as a statistic. That will help motivate people. So that's the best motivator. Is like sort of this proactive. I want to focus on longevity and optimizing my health. The problem is few of us are really like that. Even myself, I only started becoming proactive and motivated when I saw the suffering and pain that my grandparents went through in the final decades of their lives, and I was like, damn, that's not a great way to go, even if you had a great life before that. So the modern environment has puts a massive burden on us due to the toxicity and everything. So just even around my office here, plastic mouse, keyboard, remotes for my things. My podcasting equipment is metal and plastic. There's flame retardants in a bunch of these plastics as well on top of it, even if they're safer plastics like polypropylene, for example, that still has flame retardants, not as bad as PVC, but it still has the flame retardants, which are lipophilic, they're persistent organic pollutants. They're very difficult to detoxify once in the body. They sequester in our fatty tissues. So there's just dozens and dozens of micro exposures. You go into like a shopping mall or something, there's going to be the air fresheners and the cleaning chemicals, and you might not have the stuff in the house anymore. But think about it this way: most people, you don't get, like, we didn't grow up with this knowledge. Like I when I was like 9 years old, my favorite food was freaking French fries cooked in sunflower oil. That was my favorite thing. I was eating that as much as my parents would allow me. Obviously, they were not. We ate a lot of good food as well, but like that's the things that I would eat the most if I had the choice. So we learn these things much later in life, most of us, which means that over the decades we've been getting a lot of exposures. We've been accumulating a lot of damage, and this is what I think people don't realize. They just don't realize that what on the one hand, most people's diets are pretty bad, pretty woefully deficient. Then even my clients that come to me with a decent diet, and then we further tweak the diet and improve the diet, and then we do food sensitivity testing. It's that the one lab in the states that does this. This is a game changer test. All the basically most of the other food sensitivity tests are completely, not completely, but they're largely worthless. But this one, the lab takes your blood and they expose it to the various foods. So I give you my clean diet guidelines. We juxtapose the food sensitivity test data. So we remove the inflammatory foods, because even good foods, quote unquote, can be inflammatory for an individual at a certain point in time. So we remove that. So we further lower inflammation. We encourage current clients, if they're not already buying, organic and pasture raised and all that good stuff, we encourage them to clean the diet up further, right? But then I have many clients track their diet, so I can see at a glance in a day's sort of eating, and I can see how hard still, with all of this, it's still so hard to meet basic RDAs, recommended daily allowances for nutrients, which, by the way, even meeting the RDAs is not enough, right? The RDAs were basically made so the factory workers wouldn't keel over and die of scurvy or whatever, berry on the freaking factory floor. They were made to keep the plebs alive so they could work so the economy wouldn't grind to a halt. They're not, there's nothing about optimal health. And so even like people that I would talk in the past, like that would track their diet, I'm like, look, I met all my RDAs. I'm like, that's not necessarily enough, you know. But here's the thing: it's super hard for most people to even meet the RDAs. Like this is the insanity, right? So uh, I can see how hard it is to consistently eat well in a sufficient manner, get all the nutrients and all that stuff. So, which means that this is again a modern problem to a great extent, and just a lot of the foods that we eat again are just generally nutrient poor. If you kind of start looking into what are the most glorified foods right now as nutritious, actually they're not all that nutritious. In fact, they're kind of, I think a lot of them are pretty unhealthy. But anyway, that's beside the point. So then this means that this modern problem of a lot of toxicity, depleted soils, fairly deficient diet, we have to meet that with modern solutions. This is why we've emphasized so much supplementation. It's so important. I meet the occasional person, they're like, oh, I believe I need to get all my nutrients from food, or even worse, people say, I believe I can get all my nutrients from food. And I some like trying to think of like a funny way to respond to that, because I don't want to like offend anyone, but like, I believe in the tooth fairy and Santa Claus, so you know I have my beliefs, you have your beliefs, doesn't mean our beliefs are correct. So the point is, and I have an older episode on this. If you don't supplement your diet in today's world, you are screwed with a capital F. Okay. So think about it this way. Let's say, and I've used this example before, and apologies if I'm repeating myself, but imagine let's say you have 2,000 calories, your optimal intake of food, and imagine you ate 2,000 calories with the perfect ratios of carbs, fats, and protein, and all the nutrients, minerals, vitamins, all that stuff. Imagine you were able to actually meet that consistently, right, in this dream scenario of ours. Even that in the modern world is not enough, and I'll tell you why. It's because with all these dozens and dozens of micro exposures throughout the day that happen literally your entire life, decades and decades, that all that toxicity requires energy and nutrients for the body to capture, mobilize, transform, make water soluble, neutralize, excrete. All of that takes energy and nutrients. So let's say, pretend that takes 1% of the energy you consume in a day, the nutrients, whatever, is taken up to do all these defense and repair and detox processes. So that means that you're like at a 1% deficit. Let's just say it's 1%, which I think it might be more, but depends on the person, of course. So let's say 1% deficit, which means now you 1% of the energy and nutrients of the day, something in the body has to go without. And luckily the body is good at triaging these things and saying, okay, well, the brain and the heart and the kidneys and the lungs, all of these like things are super critical for immediate survival. So they're gonna get their share, but then other things eventually start getting down regulated, they go without. So this is where accelerated this is why a lot of people in the modern world have accelerated aging. It's because they don't know how to protect themselves. Just as an example, I spoke to a gentleman a couple of months back, and as soon as I had his age on my forums before before we met, and as soon as I saw this person's face and I saw his age, I'm like, this guy needs a lot of help, because he visibly was a lot older than people his age are in general. And I have clients that are 5-10 years older that look younger than this particular gentleman. So I'm like, okay, this dude really needs help. So then he started telling me how he eats, and like he was actually, he said, like, I believe I should get all my nutrients from food. And I just, at that point, I just kind of knew that you know we were not going to, like, when I do these free metabolic function assessments, that's not a place for me to really to be convincing people of anything. Like, if you think fasting is good for you, that's not the place. We don't have time. Or if you think plant-based is the way to go, or if you think low carb has merit long term and is really great, those are not, that's not the place and time for us to kind of debate that, because, like, it will take a lot longer. That really defeats the purpose of the metabolic function assessment. It's more like to help people get clarity on their health challenges, and then see if we can help them, if we're a good fit together. So I knew immediately that we were just not a good fit. But like things like that, like for me, for people, are a huge sort of issue, right? If they can't get over the fact that it's the modern world, therefore we need to supplement our diet, I it's not going to end well for them. So when clients come to us, usually I have a lot of clients that are sometimes taking 20 and up to, I had people with up to 30 supplements that they're taking, and like a drawer or like a cupboard full of supplements that they've been experimenting with. So a lot of the clients that come to us are super on board with supplementation. They love it. Many clients love it, and the occasional person doesn't. In those cases, we definitely like do a more stripped down bare bones protocol, but I always like want this to be emphasized that in the modern world, with the huge toxic burden and our generally poor diets and our fairly high levels of stress, you just will not be able to thrive long term, right? Because again, all of that energy and nutrients that will it will take to detox those things, which you will do that. Your body will, if they're dangerous poisons in minute quantities and they're in your body, the body will put that high enough on the priority list to excrete those things, right? But then what doesn't get something? Is it the skin? Is it, like the eyes, like things that are nice to have, fertility, libido, just having a nice head of hair. I mean, like I don't have great hair or anything, but that's definitely genetic because I've always had like very thin hair. Or maybe it was all the seed oils I ate as a kid. You know what I mean? It's hard to say. Modern challenges. Most of us have been exposed to seed oils from the day we were born. Like if you're, born in the 80s, like I am, you were probably like, your parents didn't know, my parents certainly didn't know, most people didn't know. So we've been eating seed oils and omega 6s and whatever the heck else, non-organic stuff with pesticides for decades and decades. So this is a huge challenge that I saw needs to we need to teach more people how to actually deal with this challenge. And I know we've kind of seem to be belaboring the point here, but when you break it down, like this is much more than, people say, oh, it's such a toxic environment, and that's really the extent of what they do about it. Because, or I shouldn't say not because, but that's not going to cut it long term. And what I've also seen, another thing, starting to ramble here, I guess, but what I've also seen is clients that eat well, pasture, organic, and they've removed all the toxic products. They don't buy, like, Johnson and Johnson shampoos and like just this real poisonous garbage from the local Costco grocery store. So they minimize use of plastics. They don't microwave plastics, and they don't buy Teflon and aluminum pans, and they've done a bunch of stuff in the home. But then when we do the urine test, where we get like 150 plus markers, uh, a lot of people, a big percentage of people, actually show poor detox capacity or increased toxic burden, right? So we can check things like glutathione status, which you may know is the master antioxidant in the body, in the cells. So oftentimes that is showing basically quote unquote glutathione deficiency on the lab work. We're showing increased exposure to, for example, certain gasoline additives. We can catch that as well, toxic metals, or we can see nutrient deficiencies or vitamin, like minerals, or vitamin deficiencies. So, or another great one that we have on that test is DNA damage. The marker is called 8-OHTG, 8-hydroxy 2-deoxyguanosine. Really interesting marker to, because like I've seen it in healthy people where it's not elevated, like not in the, like the red or the yellow, but close to yellow. So these are like super, it's the canary in the coal mine type thing, super early markers that something in the body deeper down is, there's something going on, whether that's an exposure, whether that's reduced detox capacity, or some combo of both. It doesn't even matter, because we're going to address both of those, right? So when I see this, and like, again, we see it often, and of course, maybe my sample size here is not great, and my sampling of people that come to me is people with health challenges. But I'll tell you this: I also see it in healthy individuals. It just hasn't caught up with them. I can give like concrete examples, right? If just as an example, and because we this is public information, because we've done episodes about this. But Charlie Robinson, my buddy that hosts the macroaggressions podcast, we when we did this kind of test with him a couple 2 3 years back, he was already showing signs of this detox capacity wasn't great, right? So I gave him some stuff there to resolve that. But he's very healthy. Like he's, I don't know, he's like 8% body fat, and I know maybe he's, I think he's a bit too lean, but he's lean, he's ripped, he's strong, he's healthy. His brain, his mind works really well. So very, like, he's a specimen. I gotta say, he's a amazing specimen that we need to study more. That's why I keep sending him lab tests, because I just need to study this guy. Like, it's research. But like, we caught that, and he was about 50 at the time. So we caught that, and we put something in place, and then we retested that later on, and it was in a much better, like, we did all the toxic metals, the nutrient elements, and things were looking a lot better, right? So the point there is that just because you are healthy right now, just because you feel fine, doesn't mean there isn't an undercurrent of oxidative stress, inflammation, DNA damage, deficiencies. These things just take a very long time to manifest, because the body is really good at just keeping it together. Like, can keep it together for a very long time. I remember, um, at the beginning of the year, a gentleman that came to me last year around the summertime. We did the same test, and like, his oxidative stress marker for, it's the T-bar thiobarbituric acid reactive substances. That's another really good marker we can catch. It's a marker of lipid peroxidation. So his one was the highest I ever saw. It was actually off the charts, like red, way into the red. It's the first time I actually saw something that crazy off the charts. Usually, the lipid peroxidation marker, if it's in a place I don't like, it would be like close to the yellow. So it's, green, high green, that's kind of borderline yellow, and then yellow is like, warning, warning. So I already don't like it if it's in the high green. But he was beyond the yellow, beyond the red, off the charts, like almost 2x above the top of the range. And but here's the thing: there was a bunch of, like, 4 or 5 toxic metals were in the red, deficiencies out the wazoo, candida, all that, like, just almost every single area of the test that we tested for vitamin deficiencies. uh Neuroinflammation was elevated. That's another great marker we can catch. But then when we actually discussed the test with him, and I kind of explained things a little bit, he was already feeling a lot better, by the way, because that was like, he only collected that sample like 6 7 months after we started working together. So he already started putting into place some of my recommendations. But what he said is that, wow, now I understand why last year I thought like I was about to die, like I was dying. And yeah, I'm like, yeah, because we also did a stool test. He had caught, like, traveling in Asia, he had caught this parasite. So he was like actually hospitalized, like, for quite a while. And it was really rough. Like, he was proper gonna, like, perish, the poor guy. But you know the 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 thing is that all of those processes that we caught in, like, a super crazy high, like, or deficient state, or a lot of toxicity, or deficiency of vitamins and minerals, oxidative stress, like, that is, like, he still survived all of that. He still survived that and was able to travel and do stuff, and whatever the case. So the point is, the body will keep it together for a very long time. Like my grandmother, like 3 decades of statins and drugs and blood pressure medications, and she basically continued to eat seed oils like her entire life, and she lived to 84 years old, and she would barely eat, like, most, like, like oil and maybe some cheese, some tomato, like, just that was her diet, a bit of bread, like, that was like her diet for a very long time. And she kept it together and taking care of my granddad through his degeneration and sort of uh deterioration for a long time. and she kept being able to take care of him. And she only started really taking a turn for the worst when he passed away. That was really heartbreaking, and that's when she started having her strokes, and she had multiple strokes. But think about it, 8 years she kept it together, and of course she had her gallbladder taken out, she had glaucoma, uh, some other kind eye stuff. What's the other one that's very common? Cataract. She had a lot of problems, but she kept it together for a very long time. However, at the expense of just horrific quality of life the last, let's say, 10 plus years. So that is why the live longer formula, because I saw what my fate was if I didn't change, and I see what many people's fate is. I saw it, and I didn't even see it all that close because I couldn't stomach it, but my mother and my sister and my aunt, they saw it a lot closer. And I I was largely shielded from all of that, to be quite honest. But it was enough to still just be almost traumatic, if you know what I mean. So that's why the live longer formula. But hold on a second, Mr. Blabbermouth here, that was like one of three talking points that I had prepared. I thought I would be done by now, to be perfectly honest with you. And if you're still here, just give yourself a pat on the back. You send me an email. I'm gonna send you a free hardcover copy of my book for listening to this. If you send me an email in the next 20 days citing this episode, I will send you a hardcover copy book, the live longer, how to actually live longer volume 1. Will send that to you if you're in the US, Canada, Australia. I'm sorry, I can't send it other places, or UK as well. Okay, email me about this in the next 20 days, and we'll get that sorted for you. Just for persevering. Like, I'm surprised people even like tune into the show. Anyway, so that is one reason the live longer formula is what it is, because I want to prepare you and teach you how to protect your health and your family's health, ideally, for life. Not just let me just resolve this gut problem and or whatever, or sleep problem, and I'll go off on my merry way. I want to, of course, help you with that stuff, but I want to give you the tools to protect your health, because if we don't, accelerated aging, and with that usually comes disease early on, earlier than it would have, is on the menu, is on the card. So we want to avoid that as much as possible. I want to pay it forward that I couldn't help my grandparents. I want to pay it forward to other people. Now, the other problem, the other modern challenge, is these unnatural levels of stress that almost all of us are dealing with. So if you read my book, or if you listen to the podcast more, you will know that stress, I have this model in the book of the three primary drivers of aging and dysfunction. So one of them, the main one, is really stress. And stress can be psychological, it can be physiological, it can be mechanical, with injuries and broken bones and whatever the case is there. But stress really is what one of the primary, it's what ages us, it's what kind of accelerates disease. And the reason it does that, even if psychological, because like psychological stress causes biochemical cascades in the body, right? It's like my buddy Brendan Vermeer, great functional medicine expert, has this great saying: thoughts become proteins. So you could think yourself into a higher cortisol state right now as we speak, and that then has what that has an effect on the body, is of that of an effect of degeneration, right? It degenerates the body, it weakens the immune system, it suppresses the immune system. And if you look into it, you see that high cortisol or elevated cortisol is implicated in almost any condition and disease you can think of. Things like cancer, of course, uh, which is intuitive, but also things like depression, right? So uh, cortisol, it will raise your blood pressure, it will dysregulate your lipids. Your doctor will label that as hypercholesterolemia, will give you a statin to further poison you, right? Even though the cortisol was already causing damage and health problems, they will put you on pills to further, you know, destroy your health. And that's actually that's the third point, so I won't get ahead of myself. So yeah, so these unnatural levels of stress, it might not necessarily be um visible, right? It could be like the light at home that you have. You know, I walk my dog at like 10 o'clock at night for about an hour, just to kind of let her run around without stress of, you know, humans. She's very scared of humans. She was traumatized as a baby, so she's still very scared of most people, especially kids. They scare the bejesus out of her. But anyway, I walk at 10 o'clock at night, just kind of in the neighborhood here, that the dog run around, and I see some people. They still have those long sort of fluorescent lights in their, like, their kitchens, their living rooms and stuff. So I mean, LEDs we know are bad enough, Christ, but like people have fluorescent lights still, because like these homes were built in the early 2000s. So I just imagine all the older buildings, like from the 70s, 80s, whatever. Like they still have like fluorescent lights in the corridors and all the other places. It's just, think about the stress of that. And I'm talking about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. These lights are on in those people's houses, homes. So that's a stressor that a lot of people don't realize. EMFs, like I went to I was visiting my sister in Ireland, like a couple 3 months back, and like they have I think it's a 5G router on, maybe two routers, and they're on all the time. They don't turn them off. And like I felt like a weird, almost like a buzzing, like a pressure in my skull there. It was very similar like when I was in Mexico and at an Acapulco earlier the year. Like I had like this buzzing or this pressure in my head, and there was like cell phone towers every, I don't know, I guess half a mile type thing there. And I was actually during the conference, I actually got to talk to some people that also reported the same thing, like headaches and feeling pressure inside the head. And so that's a stressor that many of us don't realize, and many do, but they don't do anything about it. It's like the toxic burden, you know. People know about it, they don't buy toxic products as much, but they still don't know how to boost their detox capacities. Because again, when we do the urine test, it comes back people that eat clean lifestyle, clean home, they still have detox problems and deficiencies, right? So similarly with the EMS, people know about EMS, but then I have a question on my intake forms that it says, you know, where is your Wi-Fi router? You know, it'll be like, oh, it's like it's 10 yards away from me, my office, and I work there all day or whatever, or near, it's next to my freaking kids' bedrooms, or and I have a question: do you put your phone on airplane mode when it's on your person? And honestly, the last 100 people, most of them said no. Most of them, like maybe 90% of them would probably have said no, they don't keep it on airplane mode. So people know, but they don't actually do stuff. Like like when I travel, not that I use all of these things, but I have EMF scarves, like this really nice silky looking one, really awesome. It really works. I've tested it. I have an EMF meter. I've tested these things, you know. I have like when my daughter was born, I bought like these throws, like these like blankies that were, you know, EMF protecting. And I have obviously, like I said, an EMF meter. And when I put my office together, when we bought this place, I tested, made sure, not that we have Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is never on in our home, but like when I put my, oh, because I have a lot of gear here in the office, so I actually tested the electric fields to make sure that I was sufficiently far away from outlets and extension cords and things that, because a lot of those fields, they're actually cumulative. You have a bunch of stuff plugged in close together, the field will increase. So I always, like, even once in a while, just because I have device creep, in the modern world, you have a bunch of like stuff. So over time, you have more devices. So every once in a while, I take the meter out. I check, make sure everything is sufficiently far away from me, that, you know, it reduces some of that stress. It doesn't necessarily eliminate it fully, because you know, I'm still looking at a screen. But then the other thing is the screen. Like I have Like when people look at this screen, they're almost like their eyes start to burn because I have this blue light filter app that has reduced the blue light so much that almost it's really horrible at first. You have to get accustomed to it, and over time lower it. But then when I just the other day I realized when I record videos it's without blue light and it looks like orange and weird. So I tried to record a presentation with the blue light back on 100%. And just after like 10 minutes, like, man, my eyes are like burning from all this blue light, destroying, like burning holes in my eyeballs. So things like that, a lot of people, you get accustomed to the stressor, whatever that stressor is, relationship, physical stress, running every day, whatever. Intermittent fasting, you get used to the stressor, but that doesn't mean it's not slowly but surely weakening and degenerating you, suppressing your immune system, and aging you faster. So the point here is we're dealing with unnatural levels of stress in the modern world, whether we believe it or not, whether we realize it or not, and whether we are cognizant of the various types of stressors that we're dealing with. And most people, yet again, even people that are conscious of these things, they might know about the stressors, but they don't do enough about them. Right. So this is why the live longer formula, I'm gonna like make a trademark this phrase or something, but we use what I call aggressive stress reduction. Right, we have to be a little bit aggressive with the stress reduction because it's the stressors are very aggressive. Where again, whether we believe it or not, whether we feel it or not, it's beside the point. A lot of guys, especially, they don't feel stress. Actually, a client of mine, he comes to the coaching calls and he's like, I feel great, and he himself now realizes like the problem is I feel great, and then boom, I'm in the hospital. So you know a lot of guys are like that, and we don't, whether we feel it or not, whether we're sensitive to it or not, there's a lot of stressors, and we have to meet the stressors where they're at. That's why we have to. There's a lot of there's a lot of ways we can lower stress. So people think lowering stress is like not, I guess, not working too hard, which yes, not maybe doing meditation to lower stress or breathing exercises. And I mean that stuff is sure it's great, but we're talking about eating in a way that supports reducing stress, eating in a way that doesn't allow stress to creep up in terms of like cortisol, adrenaline. Uh, Doing stuff supplementation wise that will lower cortisol, block cortisol, that will prevent stress from then destroying sleep, or stress hormone cascades destroying sleep, and so on and so forth. And then when you do that, the nice thing is that, like I said, stress suppresses the immune system, but then when you lower stress, what the nice thing is that it allows for good things to happen again in the body, like repair and regeneration is halted by cortisol in the cell. For example, high cortisol will lower testosterone. For example, if you do things that lower stress in the various different kinds of ways, and the stress hormones are lowered, the immune system can run better. Repair of tissues can actually work. So there's just a lot of benefits to doing this aggressive stress reduction. And what I noticed, especially in the last couple of years, me doing this aggressive stress reduction, what I noticed is over time, it seems like almost I've changed. Like at least currently, just I'm less. I feel like I'm a bit more resilient to just random stresses that come up, because when you live in a high stress state and you're a little bit like strung out and like everything's triggering you, it's pretty horrible, but you get used to it, and then you chalk it down to like that's my personality or that's my lifestyle. But then when you live in a lower stress sort of state for a while, first it takes some time to get used to, but then over time it just kind of, it almost like through neuroplasticity, it shapes you to then respond to stress in a more positive way. Or maybe I just have been pretty low stress in the last few months, and but I used to be like really like very easily triggered, very sort of hot blooded. I'm like a Balkan, like pretty hot blooded. So pretty all my life has been like pretty crazy. a lot of demons to deal with and stuff. But I find over the last couple of years, feels like I'm in a much better place, you know, psychologically, and it has to do with just physically lowering these stress hormone cascades, and boosting certain things in the body that then allow for the biochemistry to be in a much better way, if you know what I mean. And that's super important, and everybody's needs are different, but the fact is that most of us are experiencing a lot more stress than we would have, let's say, a couple hundred years ago, or even 50 years ago, right? Or even 30, even in the 90s, just there was no devices like this, and Wi-Fi's, and 5G and 4G, and whatever the case is. So this is why in the Live Longer formula we talk so much about lowering stress in various different kinds of ways, because this is one of the primary drivers of aging and dysfunction, aka disease. And then the final point is that the final sort of reason I created the Live Longer formula is couple reasons really. So, like I said, with watching my grandparents basically from their 50s onwards get hooked up on more and more drugs every year, every couple of years, they were just on another thing and another thing, and nothing really made them better. It just kind of, it just felt like they were just being poisoned for no real benefit. So I said to myself some years ago, when I saw my grandmother going through the last sort of legs of her journey with this, I said, I can't end up like this. And the way I was living, I was on an accelerated path to ending up like that. So like, man, I gotta get my shit together, because I just kind of like met my wife to be. I knew like, we're gonna get married and stuff at some point, a lot later than she expected, though, huh? uh, had to get her pregnant for that. Just kidding, just kidding. She won't listen to this. It's okay. But yeah, so I said to myself, can't end up like that, and to not in order to not end up like her, I had to understand that you cannot become dependent on the man in the butcher coat, as my friend of mine likes to say, because there's no the incentive there for cures or healing, right? But okay, so what do we do though? Okay, we a lot of us get that, but then what do we do? Like, what I did is I go to turn to people I respect, influencer that I resonate with, and I look to them for health advice, right? So influential friends got me on the plant-based bandwagon. Then I started like look into social media, and then carnivore people, and Dave Asprey, and the bulletproof coffee, and the keto, cyclical keto, and the all that stuff. And what I found over the years, as I did some things and experimented with all these different things and listened to all of these people's podcasts and stuff, what I found is that unfortunately a lot of the mainstream and alternative mainstream health advice, a lot of it is pretty horrific. Like, it doesn't hold much water when examined, even for a little bit, in terms of the veracity of their claims. Like, for example, Dave Asprey, which nothing against Dave Asprey, learned a lot from him and his guests on his podcast and stuff, but he seems to have some beliefs that he's gonna defend like pretty strongly. For example, I remember hearing him say, I think it's I no, he said, I believe it's really beneficial to enter into ketosis once in a while. And I mean, like, that's like literally a belief. There is no evidence. Like, a lot of these evidence based things, like, there's no evidence for it. There's no real evidence that just because our ancestors went into ketosis due to starvation, that was so beneficial for them. First of all, I'm not sure this is true, to be honest with you, but they say that now we live longer than ever, which I honestly I don't believe that, but let's pretend that that's true. So if we live longer now than we did 100 years ago or 500 years ago and whatever. Like if you look at the people like Hadza Tanzania, the hunter gatherers, they don't live to like 80, 90 years of age. They might live to like in their 60s, 70s. They don't live that long. So you could say we live longer. But yeah, so now we have access to food all the time, you know. So is it the food? God knows. Is it maybe the better healthcare? Definitely fucking not. Oh, excuse me. Excuse my French there. Uh it's the reason we live longer now, if true, there's a lot of reasons. It could be it could be just I honestly think it's just we have access to food all the time and we don't have to hunt for our food and gather it, and we have shelter, and we don't have to like go and put our lives in danger and expend a ton of energy to acquire food. I think that's probably one of the reasons. If we're actually living longer, that's probably the reason. I don't think here's the thing. We're talking about we have modern challenges, right? This is kind of the problem right now we're dealing is modern challenges, right? So we have this for-profit medical industry that has warped what we believe is healthy and what's not healthy, like cholesterol. For example, people who are fearing, I still feel like my older clients, many are still like obsessed with their cholesterol level. It's not completely irrelevant, but I guess my point here is there's definitely a lot of wisdom from how our ancestors lived, but you cannot take the things our ancestors did from 200 years ago, 2000 years ago, 20,000 years ago, and then just slot that into the modern world, because a lot of that stuff they did out of necessity due to scarcity of food and other problems with their environment. Okay, so that stuff we should not be doing just because they did out of necessity. Then there is things that they did or were subjected to, shall we say, due to environmental factors. For example, they were out in the sun, most of the day, or in the day, at least in daylight. You might be in the shade, but you're in the daylight type thing. You were more grounded, barefoot on the ground. So there's a lot of things they did out of pure, just that's how the environment they lived in, that we should be thinking about. How can we, if we can't do those things, how can we at least approximate them, emulate them, right? So but we here's the thing. We cannot just say they ate like this or they did things like this, therefore we must do all of those things. We have to pick and choose and think critically. Are those things actually conducive to health, or are they not conducive to health? They were subjected to them. For example, not eating for 3 days, I think that was a necessity. Well, not a necessity, they were subjected to that due to irregularity of food. For example, cold harsh winters, whatever the case was. So if we actually examine, is that a harmful thing, and it is a harmful thing, then we shouldn't do it. And listen, fasting, I've written about it. I've talked on the podcast about it. I don't want to get into it now, but this is what kind of I found is the mainstream and alternative mainstream. They A lot of the stuff that is being pushed doesn't really have all that sort of ancestral wisdom behind it, or scientific evidence behind it. For example, just because fasting is the on my mind now, the fasting research, a lot of it is just rat studies. Like there's no real long-term studies that especially there is no like real uh controlled studies where people don't fast, and there's no like depth of blood markers being or biomarkers being measured. They look at just stupid shit like their cholesterol went down, or their lipids, or their blood. They look like just stupid kindergarten shit, completely fucking useless. Really, like just it's just really pathetic. So the point here, just I'm getting worked up. Jeez Louise, this was supposed to be lighthearted. So the point here is that a lot of the stuff that is in the mainstream, it's gonna maybe not right now. A lot of people are already kind of sniffing this out, but a lot of it is gonna turn out to be harmful. And this, because I actually went in and I did all of these things like boosting nitric oxide and the cold exposure and taking lots of fish oil and doing low carb and keto and trying to fast. I hated it, and luckily I never forced myself to do too much of that. But this is where people go when they see the for-profit disease industry, which I think a smart individual can quickly see through that, especially after the events of 2020 onwards. But then what do is they go to the mainstream and the alternative mainstream, and like I said, a lot of what's on offer there, it might work for the 20 something, 30 something influencers doing those things because they still are super resilient and healthy, and they can withstand that stress. But it doesn't mean someone in their 40s, 50s, 60s, which is, the people that come to me will be 40 plus for the most part, 40, 50, 60, even some 70-year-old people in this year have joined the program, which was been an awesome experience actually, to help people. Because if I had my granny even when she was like 70, 75, I could have done an amazing uh, thing to help to support her health. So it's such a pleasure to help people that, it's never too late, but there is a point of no return, I think. So it's been awesome to help people like that as well. But yeah, so most people will be like 40, 50, 60 type ages. So these influencers don't realize that if something works for them, it doesn't mean it will work for everybody. And like if something works for guys, doesn't mean it will work for women. So with the live longer formula, we just help clients remove all these stressful things, all the things that are harmful in terms of, you know, practices, dietary habits, supplementation strategies, all that good stuff. So we remove that. And my goal is to never need, really, to know everything you need to know to maintain your health, and to never really need, unless it's an emergency, to never need the you know the man in the butcher coats, if you know what I mean. So that's kind of why I created the live longer formula. I didn't see a complete solution out there that would teach people how to feed themselves and supplement their diet to make sure that those gaps in the diet are filled consistently, right? Which will then support their detox capacities, which will help protect them from the massive and accelerating toxic burden of the modern world. And how to recognize, first of all, the various sources of stress, which are invisible in some cases and insidious in many, and how to protect ourselves by using this aggressive stress reduction strategy. And then, even if you won't need it all the time, you will have these tools in the toolbox. If you ever are dealing with a stressful situation, you will know exactly what to do. And it's not just supplementation, it's how you eat and what things you do and what things you don't. And even like with some clients, we teach them how to it basically, we do breathing re-education, which for many people is, there's a lot of leverage in improving the breathing, even 5-10%. There's a lot of leverage there, and some people definitely need it. Like I've seen maybe one two out of I guess 10, 20 people, maybe some, I guess 5% of people for sure have breathing inefficiencies that are contributing to their health problems. And then of course, like I had one client tell me, I guess last month, he's a police detective, so they have to have certain fitness levels. So he told me that he, just by doing some of these breathing exercises that we gave him, he shaved off 40 seconds from his mile and a half run, just by doing the breathing exercises. So some people can really benefit, and it's not just about like fitness and health. It's also like it quite literally lowers stress, breathing in a better way. And I learned this from like one of the big breathing experts in the world. So a lot of the program, what's in the program, I've basically, it's an amalgamation of my journey over the last 10 years of learning from the best in the world, the best experts. And I honestly, i'm not I don't think I know it all. I'm lucky that I gravitated to amazing teachers and the experts in the industry, and I've been able to. I think more of an integrator. I integrate things from the best from others, and this here's the thing: we all have blind spots, and none of us are perfect. None of our knowledge is perfect, but what I feel like now I'm able to do is someone that I respect, I can actually identify and not let myself blindly follow everything they say. I'm evaluating things a little bit more. And all of these guys that I learn from, I am seeing like blind spots that they have and certain things that I think that they're not correct on, which allows me then to take the things that I think they're correct on, integrate those, and then the things I think that they're not correct, I don't integrate those, and I do something that I think is better. Because remember, I'm learning from like hundreds and hundreds of different experts, and this is why it's so, I think it's so difficult for people to actually figure it all out. It's because it has to be your job. Like if you want to be like good at like fixing people's teeth, you can't like do it on the weekend or moonlight it after work. You have to like go to dentistry school and then be a dentist for like 10 years, and then you're going to be a good dentist type thing. So it's like any other thing. You can't like dabble into like the ins and outs of whatever, fixing a car. Like to be truly good so we can help people with their cars, you need to like, this needs to be your job, it needs to be your career type thing. And this is what I've this is why I created the live longer formula, because not most of us cannot do that. We all have our own specialty, our thing that we need to focus on. So my goal is, you come to us and we tell you everything you need to know, and we omit the things that are harmful and unnecessary and fluff, right? This is the most important things you need to know, because there's a lot of things you can know that would be good to know, but are not necessary for you to resolve your health challenges and optimize your health and maintain your health and longevity for life, and potentially even help those around you with their health. Some things are necessary, but there's a lot of fluff that is unnecessary, even if interesting and relevant in terms of health and true and whatever the case. So we give you the most important things, the actionable items, right? That's what I felt over the last couple of years was missing. Nobody really has this container where people don't just get the clinical assessment, the lab testing, and then the recommendations. But we also have this, and we have chat support, and we have the group calls where anyone any client can jump on 3 times a week and ask me anything about anything in terms of their health or protocols. So having that level of support, I think, is super critical, because if you just give people like let's say, like I had people that have read my book and they listen to the podcast, and then we do the clinical assessment at the start of the program, and then they're not doing just the basic stuff that I keep talking about on the podcast, or that I talk about in the book. Like they won't have taken action on the book or the podcast. And that's people that made that effort, right? So having this container where we can support our clients over the 6 months of the program, I think it's super critical, because not only is it important to have some accountability and guidance when implementing the plan, but the plan changes. Like our health is we're constantly turning over, cells, and like things are constantly changing. So when a person responds in one way to the program, you need to be able to quickly pivot and change the thing. So you might need gut support the first couple of months, but when the gut issue improves, then our goals can change. Or if you have fatigue and we improve the fatigue, maybe now it's time to work a little bit more on detoxing, work a little bit more on you know uh doing some gut cleansing, microbiome up to whatever. Or if it was a sleep issue and the sleep issue improved, then we want to work more on energy. And then when the energy thing like I have people that they're like, well, now I want to optimize my brain function, let's talk. So having this container of 6 months working together is so valuable, because again, I want you to, through small changes over the course of weeks and months, I want you to actually like build these habits that you can just coast on. Because as you know, the hard part is changing the habit, right? That takes a little bit of effort the first weeks and couple months. But then the new habit takes as much effort as the old habit, except the new habit is now more conducive to health optimization, health longevity, maintaining health, or just living better, right? Being healthier, right? So the idea is, learn all of these things, implement these things, get the guidance and support, make the mistakes while you have the support to help you get back on the horse type thing or adjust. And then when you're out of it, you just can carry on. You just carry on, and that's kind of the idea behind the program. I never enjoyed doing single sessions because I had no idea, did the person even do the things I recommended. Never mind, what if they stumbled with something? What if they understood something, and I couldn't be there to help? You know, so that's why I created the Live Longer format. That's why it is the way it is. And yeah, hope you found this interesting, relevant, useful. Uh, yeah, if you need help with your health, you know what to do. So thanks for listening or watching, and I'll see you on the next one.